Hotel family, welcome back to Matthew Daniels TV. You guys see the title. We're doing part 3 today, okay? We're doing part 3, the Declassified Dr. King Assassination Files, part 3. Happy National Black History Month. We are glad that these records are now on the table for us to examine them. If you haven't already, you can watch this video, but if you haven't already, go to my page and watch the Declassified Dr. King Assassination Files Part 1 and Part 2, and you can get up to speed. We're reading through these in real time. I haven't read through these prior. I did skim through some of it, but for the most part, you're getting my authentic reaction. And we're going over the information. We're piecing this stuff together, and we're drawing our own conclusions. I hope you guys are liking this series thus far. And again, happy National Black History Month to everyone out there in the listening audience. Okay, so let me just get this screen share up and going. All right, let me pull up the files. This is where we left off. Just going to take a brief second to check the audio and the visual, make sure everything is good. Make sure you guys can see the screen share. Make sure you guys can hear me talking. Good. Make sure you guys can hear me talking. Okay, perfect. You can hear me and you can see the screen share. So again, if you haven't already, go back and watch the Declassified Dr. King Assassination Files Part 1 and 2 on my channel. We're going through the documents page by page, and it'll get you up to speed, because what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pick up where we left off in Part 2. Okay, so this is where we left off at Part 2. These are the documents pertaining to the FBI investigation. So we have the FBI investigation of the assassination, okay? The Department of Justice, the DOJ, response, and FBI performance, okay? The murder. At approximately 6 p.m. on April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was standing on the balcony outside of his room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Moments later, Dr. King was shot by a high-powered rifle and then rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital. At 7:05 p.m., he was pronounced dead. The cause of death was a bullet wound which tore the major neck blood vessels and severed the spinal cord at the root of the neck. So that's interesting. I always was under the impression that Dr. King was shot in the head, but it appears that the official cause of death was a bullet wound to the neck, which tore a major blood vessels in the neck and severed his spinal cord. So if it severed his spinal cord, that would explain why Dr. King fell over like he did. That would most likely cause paralysis from the neck down. And it looks like he was shot around 6 p.m., pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. So they did have the opportunity to attempt certain life-saving measures. He wasn't pronounced DOA, dead on arrival. He wasn't pronounced dead at the scene. They tried, quote unquote, to save his life. So that's interesting. King was actually shot in the neck. Top priority investigation ordered. The Memphis Police Department was immediately aware of the King assault and promptly notified the FBI Memphis field office headed by SAC Robert G. Jensen. SAC Jensen telephonically relayed the information to Washington, where Director Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, and Attorney General Clark were informed. Now, I'm of the opinion that J. Edgar Hoover had his hands on the assassination of Dr. King. Okay, I don't believe that these documents are going to explicitly implement J. Edgar Hoover, but we all know it wasn't much that went on in this country without J. Edgar Hoover's knowledge and approval. He was the director of the FBI at that time, and he is on record as saying the main threat to America and American sovereignty was the African American population. After slavery, a vast majority of the European population in America, their biggest fear was the descendants of the Negro, the descendants of the slave, the African American. They've changed our name so many times. Their biggest fear was the African American population seeking revenge or retribution for centuries of slavery. And so we know that J. Edgar Hoover was actively seeking to stop, neutralize, interfere with the civil rights movement. So let's not be foolish. His hands is all over the Dr. King assassination. Okay, let's continue. The Memphis field office was directed on the evening of April 4th, 1968, to immediately conduct a full investigation of the matter as a possible violation of 18 USC 241, the Civil Rights Conspiracy Statute. This directive soon became national in scope, with SACs in all FBI field offices being ordered by teletype on April 7, 1968, to participate and conduct a top priority investigation under their personal supervision. This meant all leads were to be afforded immediate, thorough, and imaginative attention, and all possibilities from such leads exhausted. Also, 24 hours was set as the period after receipt of a lead within which the investigation and reporting must be completed. All SACs were to bear personal responsibility for any failure to handle the investigation. And the reason why we're going through this page by page is because as soon as I saw Trump say that he wanted to release some or declassify some of the information pertaining to the assassination of Dr. King, I saw a lot of videos coming out, and people were making a lot of wild claims without showing the documents themselves. Now, I'm not saying that those claims were true or false, but I believe it's important to actually show the documents. You show the documents. Yes, you can give your opinion, you can speculate, but people are smart enough to sift through the sand, so to speak, on their own. You give people the information, they can understand their information. All right. Look, progress of the investigation. The breadth of this top priority investigation is repeatedly evidenced in the Merkin files. All informant sources, racial, security, and criminal, were immediately alerted and contacted for information. The KKK and other hate groups, as well as individuals known to have violent proclivities, were checked. The files were checked for prior threats against Martin Luther King Jr. Name checks were continuously being made on selective service records, city and telephone directories, driver's license bureaus, motor vehicle divisions, financial institutions, credit records, criminal and civil records, marriage licenses, public utility rolls, unions, common carrier passenger lists, and more. So they're saying that they were doing a very, very thorough investigation. Bessie Brewer's rooming house. Key information was developed early at Bessie Brewer's rooming house, whence the shot was fired. Bessie Brewer, Charles A. Stevens, and William C. Anschutz were interviewed, and a physical description of a suspect was obtained. So they're saying that the shot was fired from something, a building called Bessie Brewer's rooming house. So apparently that's some type of motel or hotels type of building where individuals can rent out rooms. They're saying here that the shot was fired from there. Now remember, in part 2, I pointed out that they talked about finding the gun at another location that was on South Main Street. So we'll continue to read and we'll see how this new place fits into the investigation. Bessie Brewer, resident manager of the rooming house, explained that a John Willard registered with her April 4th between 3 p.m. and 3:30 p.m. He was first directed to room 8, but rejected it because it had a stove and refrigerator. Instead, he asked for a sleeping room only and accepted room 5B in the rear of the hostelry. This room provided a window with a view of Dr. King's room at the Lorraine Motel. Ms. Brewer described the new tenant as a white male, approximately 35 years of age, 5'11" to 6 feet tall, weighing 180 pounds, with a medium build and presenting a neat, clean appearance. Now, this is important. Why? Because Dr. King was shot at around 6 p.m. So if this guy, John Willard, checked into the Bessie Brewer house around 3 or 3:30, he in essence got there around 2.5 or 3 hours prior to the shooting. And he specifically rejected room number 8 and said that he wanted a sleeping room only, and accepted room 5B that had a direct line of sight to Dr. King's room at the Lorraine Motel. So he had, if this is the actual shooter, right? If this is the actual shooter, he had to have prior knowledge of what room he wanted and where of the Bessie Brewer house, and what room he wanted inside of the Bessie Brewer house prior to going there. Is no way he went there and within 2.5 hours, 3 hours, he set up the whole thing and shot Dr. King. No. If that's the guy that actually shot Dr. King, then he scoped out the scene in advance. Now, remember in part 2, I told you about the black officer named Reddit who was had Dr. King under surveillance. At around 12 o'clock, he left his partner Richmond at the church that Dr. King was speaking at, and Reddit went back to the area of the Lorraine Motel, and he quote unquote searched out a place where they could conduct their surveillance operation. And he chose fire station number 2. But I'm proposing that also, in addition to staking out where they could conduct their surveillance operation from, he also was searching out a place where they could conduct the assassination. Listen, this assassination was planned. Dr. King was supposed to die in Memphis. Okay? He was supposed to die in Memphis. And I'll go over this in another video a little bit later, but Memphis itself has Masonic overtones. Just Memphis. Memphis is what they call a particular spot in Egypt. We all know that Egypt is intimately tied to Masonic lore. And we know that within Masonic lore, there is rituals of dying, resurrecting, etc., etc. I don't want to get too far off course, but Dr. King was supposed to die in Memphis. This was all set up. It was all planned. And this guy, quote unquote, John Willard, which we know is not going to be his real name, this guy, he didn't randomly pick a spot. He picked a spot where he could conduct the assassination from. But he had to have scoped it out earlier. And it's quite possible that Reddit scoped it out prior to him. And we're going to look into the thought process of what if James Earl Ray, the white guy, wasn't the guy that murdered Dr. King. It possibly was this guy Reddit. Go back to part 2 to see my opinion on that. But let's continue. Stevens, who was in his room on the afternoon of April 4th, remembers hearing footsteps between room 5B and the bathroom. He also remembers the bathroom being occupied for considerable periods of time, 20 to 30 minutes, without water running or the toilet being flushed except for the last visit. This last visit ended when he heard what he is certain was a gunshot. Interrupted by the shot, Stevens opened his door to the hallway to see a man running down the hallway carrying a large wrapped bundle. As this man ran down the hall in the direction of Auschwitz, Stevens recalls believing that he had seen this person earlier that afternoon with Miss Brewer. Stevens described him as a white male of average build in his 30s, 5'10 to 5'11 tall, weighing 165 pounds and wearing a dark suit presenting a neat, clean appearance. Like Stevens, Anschutz was a resident of the rooming house and in his room at the time of the shooting. Now, this Stevens is giving us some good information, but we have to, we're going to read through it, but we have to be careful with him as well, because we know a lot of people were undercover agents working for the FBI. They were undercover agents working for the Memphis Police Department. And so this guy Stevens could have been a plant as well. So we don't trust him right out. Look, also, like Stevens, Anschutz was a resident of the rooming house and in his room at the time of the shooting. Also, like Stevens, Anschutz occupied a room adjacent to John Willard. He recalls watching television in his room that afternoon when he heard a gunshot. Immediately, he went to the door and as he opened it, saw a man running toward him. This man covered his face as he ran and carried a blanket-wrapped bundle. Now, this blanket-wrapped bundle is no doubt what they say was found at Knipp Amusement Company. Anschutz addressed the man saying, "I thought I heard a shot." The man responded, "Yeah, it was a shot." Anschutz described the man as 6 feet tall with a slim build and in his 30s. So this guy saying he actually had a brief conversation with the guy who is possibly the shooter. Knipp Amusement Company. Now, this is where they said that they found a green blanket, blue briefcase that contained a rifle. Okay, so I guess they're saying that this guy ran from the Brewer house to Knipp Amusement Company, ditched the murder weapon, ditched the blanket, ran to his car, a white Mustang, to make his escape. The Knipp Amusement Company is located at 424 South Main Street and is just a short distance from Bessie Brewer's rooming house at 422.5 South Main Street. So we're still on South Main Street. In the recased entrance to Knipp Company, a blanket-wrapped bundle, presumably the bundle Stevens and Anschutz saw, containing valuable pieces of physical evidence, was recovered shortly after the shooting. The store owner, Guy W. Knipp, and 2 customers, Bernell Finley and Julius L. Graham, were in the store at the time of the assassination. Each was interviewed by the FBI and described hearing a thud, which drew their attention. And as they looked to see what had happened, they observed the blanket-wrapped bundle in the entrance. At the same time, they saw a man dressed in a dark suit walking rapidly south on the sidewalk away from the bundle. A few moments later, they said a white compact automobile, possibly a Mustang, proceeded north on South Main Street at a high rate of speed. The male was described as white, approximately 30 years of age, with a medium build, 5'10" to 6 feet tall, and weighing 160 to 180 pounds. So this description is consistent throughout. The bundle, after being discovered at Knipp's doorway by a member of a Memphis Police Department tactical squad, first came into the custody of Inspector Zachary of the Memphis Police Department's Homicide Bureau. Later in the evening of April 4th, 1968, between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., Inspector Zachary delivered the bundle to SAC Jensen, who immediately had it flown by Agent Courier to Washington for laboratory examination. Why? Why are you sending it to Washington? Why are you sending it to Washington? I know this is a high-profile victim, but don't they have laboratories in Memphis? The bundle contained a model 760 Remington Game Master rifle, 30-06 Springfield caliber, and a blue zipper bag. The bag contained various toilet articles along with a pair of men's underwear with laundry tags, a pair of binoculars, 2 cans of beer, and a paper bag bearing an advertisement for York Arms Company, Memphis, Tennessee, with a York Arms Company cash sales receipt dated April 4th, 1968. So if they have a receipt, like the assassination was on April 4th. So if they have a receipt dated April 4th, are they now saying that the gun was purchased the day of the murder? That's odd. Information and physical evidence tracked. The investigation continued with emphasis on tracing all physical evidence and information received. To this end, a search of all Memphis area hotels and motels was initiated for the source of the blanket and bar of soap found in the blue zipper bag. Also, registrations at area inns were examined for the unknown suspect who fled the rooming house and who might be driving a white compact automobile. At the same time, the rifle, scope, binoculars, cans of beer, laundry tags, and other items were tracked. The rifle and scope were quickly traced to the Aero Marine Supply Company in Birmingham, Alabama. The rifle was sold to a Harvey Lohmeyer March 30th, 1968. So if the rifle was sold March 30th, 1968, about 5 days prior to the murder, what was the receipt that was from April 4th? York's Arms Company, did he buy the bullets? Did he buy the gun in Alabama and then buy the bullets in Memphis? This is all weird. The scope, along with a second rifle, was purchased March 29, 1968, but Lohmeyer exchanged this rifle the following day for the one recovered at the Knipp Amusement Company. So this mysterious guy, Harvey Lohmeyer, purchased one gun, and then he exchanged that gun for another gun the very next day. And the gun that he exchanged it for was the gun that they found the day that King was assassinated. It's a lot of funny business. According to the Aero Marine salesman, Lohmeyer explained that he talked with his brother and was advised a more powerful rifle was necessary for deer hunting in Wisconsin. However, a laboratory examination of this return rifle revealed that it was clogged with cosmoline, a heavy grease firearm preservative, and could not be loaded and ready to fire. The salesman also provided a physical description of Lohmeyer, which matched those previously obtained. The paper bag and the sales receipt from York Arms Company led agents to the Memphis store where the binoculars were purchased. Okay, so he purchased the binoculars on the day of the King assassination, and he purchased the gun, the rifle, several days earlier. The York arms salesman explained that he sold the pair of binoculars at approximately 4 p.m. April 4th, 1968, to a white male matching the descriptions previously obtained. Okay, wait a minute. So if the binoculars were purchased at 4 and this white male suspect checked into the Brewer house at around 3 or 3:30, that would mean he checked into the Brewer house and he already had the rifle. Then he left from the Brewer house, and within 30 minutes, he went to the York Arms Company, purchased a pair of binoculars the same day that King was assassinated, came back with the binoculars, watched for King to come out on the balcony, and 2 hours later, King was shot. King was shot. Now this is wild, because what if King had never come out on the balcony after 3 p.m. when this guy got there with his rifle? Someone who was next to Dr. King got him to go out on the balcony when the sniper was there and in place. It all lines up. So it was somebody working with Dr. King that Dr. King trusted that got him to go out on the balcony when they received word that everything was in place. Look, by checking the manufacturer's can codes and distribution records, the 2 beer cans were traced to South Haven Manoa Shop, South Haven, Mississippi. The center of the investigation shifted from Memphis to Birmingham on April 9th. When the search of Memphis ends focused on the Rebel Motel and the April 3rd registration record of an Eric Starvo Galt, it was already known that the rifle and scope were purchased in Birmingham, and the Galt registration also pointed to Birmingham. The registration record aroused interest because Galt registered for the night of April 3rd only, listed a Birmingham address, and drove a Mustang with Alabama license plates. The possibility of a link between Eric Starvo Galt and the unknown subject was pursued in Alabama by the Birmingham mobile offices. So I guess now they're talking about the suspicion that the assassin came from Alabama to Memphis. He stalked King from Alabama to Memphis. How did he know where King was at? How did he know what room King was in? How did he know when King would go out on the balcony? Come on, this information was really only known to the government officials because they were watching him. In their pursuit, they learned that on April 29, 1967, Galt purchased a 1966 white Mustang automobile that was seen at the crime scene. The Bureau agents also learned that the state of Alabama issued a motor vehicle operator's license in October 1967 to Eric Starvo Galt, 2608 Highland Avenue, Birmingham, Alabama. The physical description obtained from this license matched those previously received. White male, born July 20th, 1931, 5'11" tall, 175 pounds, with blue eyes and brown hair. When the investigation moved to Galt's Birmingham address, it was learned that Galt lived there in late August until early October 1967. Because of the length of his contact, emphasis was placed on developing information on Galt's background. Significantly, it was learned that during his Birmingham sojourn, Galt expressed an enthusiastic interest in dancing and attended dance school there. Los Angeles. Soon after the Birmingham connection was uncovered, Los Angeles became a focal point in the investigation. The significance of Los Angeles became apparent April 11th with the knowledge of 4 facts. So they began the investigation in Memphis, where the murder happened. The investigation took them to Birmingham, Alabama. Now the investigation is taking us all the way to Los Angeles. It seems like they're just muddy in the water, so we can't get to the truth. When on April 11, 1968, the Bureau located Galt's abandoned Mustang in Atlanta, a search of it indicated that Galt had had it serviced twice in the Los Angeles area. So this Mustang, this white Mustang that was seen fleeing the scene of the King assassination, was found in Birmingham. I'm sorry, was found in Atlanta. Now we're going from Memphis, Tennessee to Birmingham, Alabama to Atlanta. And from Atlanta, this particular car had work done on it in Los Angeles 2 separate times. That's crazy. So we got Birmingham, we got Memphis, we got Atlanta, and we got Los Angeles. 2, also incident to the search of the Mustang, a fragment of cardboard torn from a Kleenex box was found. On it were the names and Los Angeles addresses of Anita Kantz Swinkle and Ginger Nance. 3, laundry markings from the recovered underwear were tracked to Home Service Laundry and Dry Cleaning, Hollywood, California. The following day, agents learned that the name Eric Starvo Galt appeared in the laundry's records. So now we have about 3 or 4 different aliases. We have a connection to Memphis, Tennessee, where the murder took place. We have a connection to Birmingham, Alabama. We have a connection to Birmingham, Alabama, where the rifles was purchased at, the rifle that purportedly committed the murder. We have a connection to Atlanta, where the getaway car was found. And now we have a connection to Los Angeles, California, where a mechanic shop had done work to the getaway car previously. And we have names and addresses found inside of the getaway car that links to Los Angeles. And we have dry cleaning information on underwear that links to Los Angeles, California. Now, this is exactly how the FBI and the CIA move. That's for real. Like, sometimes you see the truth in movies. And when you're watching this movie when you're watching movies and you see agents, they generally have agents that have no real family structure. Okay, they have no real loyalties at home. They can go from here to here to here, assume different identities, and they'll have people assuming these different identities, and then they'll call upon them for a specific task. Like, this guy could have been living in Los Angeles, just like a sleeper cell for the CIA or FBI, and then just received the call. Hey, we need you to go to we need you to get a car. We need you to drive to Memphis. We need you to drive to Memphis, Tennessee. We'll give you the details of your mission when you get there. He drives to Memphis, Tennessee. He finds out, okay, I'm going to be performing this assassination. And all of this is so you can't really find out who this guy is. He has 3 or 4 different aliases. You don't know if he's from Memphis. You don't know if he's from Atlanta. You don't know if he's from Birmingham, Alabama. You don't know if he's from Los Angeles. It's just a hodgepodge of names, locations, and this is deep. Look, lastly, a pair of pliers recovered from the blue zipper bag were traced to the Rompich hardware store, which is within 5 blocks of Home Service Laundry and Dry Cleaning in Los Angeles. Since it was known that while in Birmingham, Galt pursued an interest in dancing, all dance schools in the Los Angeles area were checked. Galt's name appeared in the records of the National Dance Studio, Los Angeles. Eventually, the dance studio contact proved to be most important because it was through an interview with the dance studio owner that a photograph of Eric Starvo Galt was finally obtained. The owner keyed the agent to an interest Galt had expressed in attending a bartending school. Checking the area, the International School of Bartending was located, and it provided Galt's graduation photograph. For the first time, agents were able to see and distribute a photo of their subject. To be sure of maximum dissemination, the photo was circulated among the news media. While in Los Angeles, Galt first lived in the Serrano Apartments and later at the St. Francis Hotel. Persons contacted at these locations called him a loner and described him as a person who kept to himself. They always say that, loner, lone wolf. All of these assassins, they have no ties to anybody else. But the real question is, how was he making a living for himself? How was he paying his bills? How was he buying food? How was he able to go to these dance classes? How was he able to attend bartending school? How was he able to afford a Mustang? How was he able to go from Los Angeles to Birmingham, Alabama, to Atlanta, to Memphis, Tennessee? How did he afford this? What was his job? Who was he working for? Who was cutting him a check? Who was giving him money? A departure from this characterization, however, was reported by Charles Stein, who, at no expense to himself, rode with Galt in the Mustang from Los Angeles to New Orleans and returned. Charles Stein sounds like a small hat. Stein explained that he and his sister Rita Stein met Galt through their cousin Marie Martin, who was working as a barmaid at the Sultan Bar located in the St. Francis Hotel. Galt had mentioned to Martin that he was planning to drive to New Orleans, and she asked if he would be willing to give her cousin a ride there in order to pick up her children. He agreed, but it was Charles and not Rita who went along with Galt. Notwithstanding the information Stein provided, the investigation moved no closer to locating Galt. New Orleans was scoured for clues, and although Galt's hotel and room were located, the effort was fruitless. Stein also stated Galt made several telephone calls from paid telephones along the way, but an exhaustive search of countless telephone records, numbers, and subscribers produced nothing. Lastly, Stein explained that Galt conditioned the ride to New Orleans on Charles Stein, Rita Stein, and Marie Martin joining George Wallace's American Independent Party. Each joined, but again, the ensuing investigation of this lead learned nothing. How is this guy paying his bills? Atlanta. We're going to focus the investigation in Atlanta. Now, but again, how did this guy, whoever he is, how did he get out the area with all of those cops, all of those undercovers, and all of those tactical units surrounding the Lorraine Motel? How did he even get away? On April 11, 1968, a citizen call came through to the Atlanta Police Department reporting the missing white Mustang. According to this caller and another person, both interviewed by the FBI, the abandoned Mustang was parked shortly before 9 a.m. April 5th, 1968 by a lone man matching Galt's description. The discovery of Galt's Mustang immediately caused agents to seek out any additional contacts by Galt in Atlanta. So after the assassination, this guy who's using an alias, Galt is an alias, jumps in his Mustang. He drives from Memphis, Tennessee, all the way to Atlanta, Georgia. Right? So King is killed around 6 p.m. April 4th, 1968. 9 a.m. the next day, April 5th, the getaway car is being ditched in Atlanta. Because Galt was believed to use low-cost rooming houses, all such establishments were contacted for any sign of him. Success was found at Jimmy Dalton's Gardener's rooming house, where Galt registered March 24th, 1968. Although Galt was nowhere to be found, he had left evidence behind. Found in his room were a booklet, Your Opportunities in Locksmithing, and a collection of maps. One of these maps was the city of Atlanta with the residence of Martin Luther King Jr. and the headquarters of SCLC Circle, SCLC being the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a group of pastors that Dr. King was a part of. Other evidence of Galt's presence in Atlanta was received from the Piedmont Laundry, where records showed he picked up laundry April 5th, 1968. So he picked up laundry in Atlanta the day after the murder, after he abandoned the getaway vehicle. But the question remains, if he had been watching Dr. King in Atlanta, why did he have to follow Dr. King all the way to Memphis to assassinate him? That's a good question. But look, Galt identified as James Earl Ray. Now we're finna get into James Earl Ray, the man who is known as the Dr. King assassin. Up until this point, they've been calling him Galt, an alias. Now we're finna get into the part of the investigation where they identify Galt, his real name. Look, knowing that Galt returned to Atlanta after the assassination, all conceivable modes of transportation in, around, and out of Atlanta were checked. However, Galt's trail was cold. There was no evidence as to where he fled from Atlanta. The Bureau became worried because with each passing hour, Galt's chances of avoiding capture became better and better. Therefore, the investigative emphasis shifted from following Galt's trail to identifying Galt. In an effort to accomplish this, the Bureau initiated a comparative search of 3 identical latent fingerprints believed to be Galt's. One fingerprint was recovered from the rifle, a second from the binoculars, and a third from the map of Atlanta found in Galt's room, against fingerprints of white male fugitives. To be sure, the limitation to fugitives was purely speculative. However, the speculation paid off when on April 19, 1968, James Earl Ray's fingerprint card compared identically. With the discovery that Eric Starvo Galt was James Earl Ray, the investigation was redirected to a search of Ray's whereabouts since the time of his April 23, 1967 escape from Missouri State Prison. Hold on. Wait a minute. Whoa. So James, I didn't know this. I'm going to be honest. So James Earl Ray escaped from a Missouri State Prison April 23rd, 1967. Please don't tell me he was on the run the whole time and then he ended up killing Dr. King. What? James Earl Ray had escaped from a Missouri State Prison April 23rd, 1967, about a year before the Dr. King assassination. How was this escaped convict making ends meet? Was he on the run the whole time? Wow, this is getting deep. How many of you guys knew that James Earl Ray was an escaped convict? I'm going to be honest. I had no idea that James Earl Ray was an escaped convict. He had escaped from a Missouri State Prison. How was this guy escaping from a Missouri State Prison and he has the ability to go from Los Angeles to Atlanta to Memphis to Birmingham. He has money for rooms, money for food, money for dance classes, money for bartending classes. How was he operating like this? And why is it that an escaped convict would be watching Dr. King? What the hell is he doing? Why would he be trying to assassinate Dr. King? Man, this is getting deep. Through the months of April and May, the Ray Galt steps were traced. James L. Ray is Eric Starvo Galt, who escaped. Damn. James L. Ray escaped from a Missouri state prison April 23rd, 1967. A year before, quote unquote, assassinating King, this guy escaped from prison. You need more information on him. Eventually, the Bureau was able to account for Ray's whereabouts almost continuously since his escape. Nevertheless, his trail remained cold beyond Atlanta on April 5th, 1968. So this dude had been on the run, and I hope I'm getting this wrong, but what it looks like is they're saying that the King assassin had been on the run. Wow. In connection with their search, Ray's family was identified, located, physically surveilled, and periodically interviewed for information. Also, prison inmates and associates were queried, as well as his military record perused. What military record? Damn. So the guy that they're saying killed King, he was also in the military, not just an escaped convict. I wonder what he was in prison for. Hold on, family. Let's see if we can pull up real quick. Why was James Earl Ray in prison? Let's look at him. Let's start off with Wiki. Why was he in prison though? Ray committed a variety of crimes prior to the murder of King. Ray's first conviction of criminal activity, a burglary in California, came in 1949. In 1952, he served 2 years for the armed robbery of a taxi driver in Illinois. In 1955, he was convicted of mail fraud after stealing money orders in Hannibal, Missouri. For this, he was in prison for 4 years in the federal United States Penitentiary, Leavenworth. So he did state time and fed time. In 1959, he was caught stealing $120 in an armed robbery of a Kroger store in St. Louis. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for repeated offenses. He escaped from the Missouri State Penitentiary in 1967 by hiding in a truck transporting bread from the prison bakery. Wow. So this dude was a career criminal. James L. Ray was a career criminal. Why was he interested in assassinating Dr. King? That's crazy. So he got arrested for burglary. He went to prison for burglary. Then he went to prison for armed robbery. Then he went to prison for mail fraud. Then he went to prison for an armed robbery again at Kroger's. Then he gets a 20-year sentence. He doing a 20-year bid. He somehow escapes prison by hiding in a truck transporting bread from the prison bakery. And while he's on the run, He decides, hey, you know what? I'm on the run, but I want to go kill this guy, Dr. King. Oh, man. What are the odds that somebody came to him like an FBI agent or a CIA agent and recruited him? What are the odds that he was recruited? We definitely got to look into that. We're going to go back into these FBI files because we're looking into these declassified files, but that's interesting, family. That's very interesting. So the man robbed a Kroger, got 20 years for being a repeat offender, escaped. He was on the run for over a year or around a year, and he pops up in Memphis to kill Dr. King. Sound like a patsy to me. Just somebody to put it on. What did I stop? Ray's family. Oh, and he was in the military. So, but man, let me go back. So before all these crimes, he was in the military? Let's look at some of his military record. Oh, hold on. 3 days later, hold on, let me slow down. Recanting of confession. So he eventually said he didn't do it. Now, we know we can't just believe everything he say, but 3 days later, Ray recanted his confession. He had entered a guilty plea on the advice of his attorney, Percy Foreman, to avoid the sentence of death by electrocution, which would have been a possible outcome of a jury trial. Unbeknownst to Ray, however, a death sentence would have been commuted as unconstitutional under the de facto moratorium in place since 1967. Ray dismissed Foreman as his attorney and thereafter derisively called him Percy Fourflusher. Ray began claiming that a man he had met in Montreal, he was back and forth to Canada, that a man he had met in Montreal back in 1967 who used the alias Raoul had been involved in the assassination, and he asserted that he did not personally shoot Dr. King, but may have been partially responsible without knowing it, hinting at a conspiracy. Ray told this version of the assassination in his flight during the following 2 months to journalist William Bradford Huey. What did Raoul look like? If he looked like Reddit, I believe him. Wow, this is crazy. This is crazy. That's crazy. Hold on. All right, let's get back to the information. We seeing some stuff. We're gonna look into that. We definitely gonna look into that. But now we know that the guy who was charged with assassinating Dr. King had a military record. He was in the military. He was also a career criminal. And when he assassinated, quote unquote, assassinated Dr. King, he was an escaped convict, serving a 20-year bid for robbing a Kroger's. Ray's family said they knew nothing. They had not heard from nor been in contact with James and did not know of his whereabouts. Prison inmates and associates told tales of bounties offered for the death of Dr. King, but exhaustive investigations could not substantiate their claims. Frustrated, the director prepared a memorandum for the Attorney General dated May 13, 1968, in which he explained that extensive investigation had not resulted in any new developments beyond Atlanta April 5th. Therefore, the director requested authorization for telephone and microphone surveillance on Ray family members. The request, however, was never acted upon. Passport search. From an interview with a former cellmate of Ray's at Missouri State Prison, it was learned that Ray appreciated the ease with which a person living in Canada could obtain a false passport. Though it is not clear that the cellmate's comments precipitated a search of Canadian passports issued since Ray's April 13, 1967 escape, it is known that on the request of the FBI legate in Canada, such a search was conducted by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. A passport search was also conducted in Mexico and the United States. So get this. You have a guy with a military background in and out of prison. He escapes from prison while on the run. He's back and forth from Mexico to Canada to Alabama to Atlanta to California. How is he doing this? Where is he getting money from? Where, I mean, is he, think about it, is he just robbing everybody along the way? Is all of his money coming from robberies? Obviously, he's not the best criminal because he got locked up several different times. Where is his money coming from? And then he ends up saying that he was approached by someone named Raul. Now, some people could say that, oh, he's just saying that he's lying to get out of it. But Raul could have actually been an FBI informant. They could have used this guy, set him up as a patsy, somebody to take the fall. And with his criminal record, he wouldn't be as believable. His testimony would be questionable. Somebody that they can convince, bro, you already escaped from prison. You're already doing 20 years. You're going to do life anyway. You might well take this. We're going to give you the death penalty. This guy was a patsy. I still think Reddit did it. We're going to look into that. Though the search went through a staggering number of applications and was based on the comparison of Ray's photograph to those submitted with the application, it proved to be the necessary break in picking up Ray's trail. At 9:30 p.m., June 1st, 1968, the legal attaché, Ottawa, Canada, called the Bureau to advise that after reviewing some 175,000 applications, the RCMP located a passport issued April 24th, 1968 under the name Raymond George Sneed, which contained a photograph very definitely similar to Ray. So now we have another alias. And we have him in Canada. Let's see, King was killed in April, May, June. So about 2 months after King is assassinated, this escaped convict makes it all the way to Canada. Now, if you think about it, if you escape from prison, doing a 20-year bid, you go to Mexico, you go to Canada, why would you come back to the United States? Why would you come back? Like, why would you risk getting caught and picked up and taken back to prison? You already made it to Mexico. Why not live out your life? You already made it to Canada. Why not just live out your life? Why are you coming back? And why come back to assassinate Dr. King? Could it be that J. Edgar Hoover or somebody that worked for him caught Ray and was like, hey, we got you. Now, look, we could either take you back to prison, you could finish this 20-year bid and get an extra 50 years added on for the escape, or you can do a job for us. And if you do this job for us, you can go back to Canada, live out the rest of your life. And James Earl Ray is like, okay, I'm going to do the job. He go there thinking he's about to do the job. He's thinking he's about to assassinate somebody, kill Dr. King. Boom, somebody else assassinate him. He runs, he goes on the run, or he really shoot him. We don't know yet. He goes on the run, but instead of them letting him just get away, they arrest him, offer him the death penalty. He plead guilty. He goes back to prison. But why would an escaped convict go to Mexico and come back to the United States? And then go to Canada and come back to the United States? Why would an escaped convict come back after he's made it? You see? The passport was filed by the Kennedy Travel Agency in Toronto, Canada. And think about it. They would have never been on this trail had they not been looking for the king assassin. He had got away. He had made it. Incident to their investigation, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police contacted the travel agency and obtained a hand-printed note from Sneed concerning his application. Sneed, again, is an alias of James Earl Ray. The note, together with a passport photo and a latent palm print, were forwarded to the Bureau for Laboratory Examination, which concluded that Ray and Sneed were the same person. So now we got about 5 aliases. Oh, Ray apprehended. So this is when they actually captured James Earl Ray. The Kennedy Travel Agency also provided information that Sneed purchased a round-trip air ticket from Toronto to London, departing May 6th and returning May 21st, 1968. But New Scotland Yard determined that Sneed turned in the return portion of the fare and received a May 7th, 1968 ticket to Lisbon, Portugal, plus a $14.60 voucher. Again, how was this escaped convict paying for all of this? You got to ask the questions that matter. So he's in Canada. He purchases a trip to go from Toronto, Canada to London. He's going to go all the way to Great Britain. But then when he gets to Great Britain, he says, you know what? I don't want to go back to Canada. He gets a ticket to go to Lisbon, Portugal. How is this man country hopping? Immigration authorities in Lisbon were immediately contacted. It was learned that Ray had entered Lisbon May 7th, but had exited for London May 17, 1963. How is he paying for this? How is he going from country to country? He was working with the FBI. Stops were issued by New Scotland Yard for Sneed at 11:15 a.m. June 8, 1968. Ray was apprehended by officers of New Scotland Yard while he was passing through British immigration offices in the London airport. At the time, he was planning a flight to Brussels, Belgium. Now he's going to Belgium? Belgium? An escaped convict. God damn, man. Y'all open your eyes, man. California, Atlanta, Birmingham, Memphis, Tennessee, Toronto, Canada, Mexico, London, Portugal, Belgium. This man all over the place. How is he affording it? Alleged conspiracies. Literally, scores of alleged conspiracies were communicated to the Bureau. From the date of the assassination in April 1968, even up to this date, the FBI have been approached by numerous persons with stories which purport to identify a conspiracy to kill King. Absolutely, it was a conspiracy. These stories involve the widest range of perpetrators and participants as well as motives. To the extent that these leads were pursued, the Bureau was put in the rather difficult position of conducting an investigation which ranged far beyond the concrete evidence that had already been obtained. And remember, the Bureau was behind the assassination of Dr. King. Let's just put that out there. When the leads were in fact the bogus one, the FBI was attempting to prove a negative in each reported case. With a controversial figure such as Dr. King, the possibilities of conspiracy were numerous. Consequently, the Bureau's credibility would necessarily be strained, given its past relationship with the civil rights leader, unless each story was disproved, meaning the Bureau was actively surveilling King and actively trying to neutralize him as a civil rights leader. So obviously when he gets killed, they're under the microscope because they were immediately trying to stop him. Yet the Bureau attempted to cover each lead. As previously stated, each SAC was held personally responsible for an expedited and thorough review. We're going to read down to where we get the story of James Earl Ray, and we're going to stop there, and I'm going to pick up there on part 4. So we're almost done with part 3. Based on our review of the files, the task force is satisfied that the FBI did a credible and thorough job in attempting to identify any possible conspiracy or persons who could have been involved in the murder. In each of the allegations received, the Bureau immediately interviewed the person who was the source of the allegation where this was possible, i.e., where the source was not anonymous. In situations where the complaint was not an obvious hoax, the Bureau then attempted immediately to identify the alleged participants and interview them. Where there was not a satisfactory explanation to dispel the allegation concerning such matters as whereabouts or associations, the Bureau then would check further. This does not mean that every allegation was pursued to the ultimate degree. Judgment based on experience dictated many of the decisions. These judgments were also tempered by a critical factor. Within 15 days after the murder, the FBI was convinced that Galt and Ray were the same person, that this individual purchased the rifle, rented the room across from the Lorraine Motel, and fired the shot that killed King. So at this point, the FBI is convinced already that James Earl Ray is the assassin. So while they are looking into these other conspiracy theories, they already believe that they have their suspect, they have their man, they know who did it. The patsy, James Earl Ray, the person that the FBI set up. While there were many other people who were antagonistic toward Dr. King, and many who had apparently discussed killing him, any successful conspiracy would have to have involved Ray based on the evidence at hand. Why would James Earl Ray want to do it? In all the years following the assassination, the investigation has failed to reveal any connection between any alleged conspirators and James Earl Ray, including those alleged by Ray himself, because the people doing the investigation are the people who conspired with James Earl Ray. You did? The people who are doing the investigation is the guilty party. Indeed, the overwhelming evidence indicates that Ray was almost totally alone during the year after his escape from the Missouri State Prison. It's always a lone wolf. Always a lone wolf. Don't be fooled. It's always a lone wolf shooter. Nonsense. We have not addressed here the Bureau's handling of particular conspiracy leads because of the large number of allegations involved. Bureau files can be checked for each reported lead and the resulting investigation that led trace to its conclusion. So there you have it. Now we're up to the part where they're going to tell us about the story of James Earl Ray, a chronology of Ray's activities on and after April 23rd, 1967, the day of his escape. He served I'll just read this first part. On Sunday, the 23rd of April, 1967, after he had served 7 years of a 20-year sentence for armed robbery in the Missouri State Penitentiary at Jefferson City, James Earl Ray escaped. When the truck appeared at the prison bakery where Ray worked, a bread box was carried onto the truck to be delivered to a nearby prison farm. Ray had concealed himself inside the bread box and later fled from the prison truck at a stop prior to its reaching the Ren's prison form. And from that escape, he was able again to go from Mexico to Canada to Alabama to California to Atlanta, get dance lessons, get bartending lessons, buy a Mustang, get his serviced, have his clothes cleaned at the dry cleaners. He was working for the FBI from the minute he escaped. I believe that. I believe that. But we're going to look more into it. So I want to thank you guys for tapping in. Again, this is part 3, where we are delving into the declassified FBI files of the Dr. King assassination. And we're doing this for National Black History Month. We're on page 65 of the documents. Let's see how far this goes. Oh, look like somebody's got to load. We still have a lot we can cover. It's over 100 pages worth of documents. Look like we're a little over we're around halfway through. I'll probably be coming back to you guys sometime tomorrow, and I'll be picking it back up. And I appreciate you guys' patience, because what I want to do, I didn't want to read over this information and then bring this information to you guys and just give you my opinion on it. No, I wanted to read page by page, line by line, and put this information out there, put the documents out there so you guys can see the information for yourself. You can hear my opinion on the information, but you can also make an opinion for yourself. So let me stop the screen share. Let me go back here. So again, this has been your brother Matthew Daniels, aka the Real Bookworm. I am the greatest author alive, the greatest author of all time, 16 published books. You know what it is. And this has been Declassified Dr. King Assassination Files Part 3. I'll be coming to you guys tomorrow with Part 4. And we'll be picking up where we left off. Thank you guys for watching. As always, may your name live on forever, and may your memory never die. Hotel, I'm out.